Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. I hope that you can accept my profuse apologies for interrupting. I mean, and I half facetiously say that, but I also mean it. I mean, how wonderful is it that we come here Shabbat morning and we see our friends and we engage in robust conversation. We call it schmoozing. Yeah. Anyway, I hope everybody is well. So let's see. Welcome to live streamers. Glad to have you with us as well. So let's just launch into our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We praise you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who sanctifies us through God's commandments and joining upon us the obligation to immerse ourselves in words of Torah. Amen. Thanks so much to Maud for sponsoring bagels and picking up bagels. I know now not to move immediately on from the announcement. Very good. Okay, so we are finishing the book of Numbers today with a double portion, Matot Maseh. It contains 7 chapters. So I always feel when I get to this point that the editors are rushing to the end. rather than divided. And now in a leap year, we have to have both portions represented week by week. But here, they put them together. 7 chapters in a parsha is a lot of chapters. We saw something like it in Genesis, which moves 6 chapters at a time. I don't know exactly why that is. A speculation is that the editors are trying to get to Exodus, where the main events happen to the people, plus all the very difficult relationships in the book of Genesis. I mean, we groove on that, the complexities of relationship, but I sense that the editors are a little bit squeamish about it and would like to get to Mount Sinai. So I have no idea whether there's anything to what I just said, but I'm just thinking it through. And the book of Numbers the same way. We've had all kinds of problems in the book of Numbers. These 7 chapters each deals with a different issue. And then next week we start on Deuteronomy, which of course is a crucial book in the 5 books of Moses. So what I'd like to do is just briefly indicate what the subject matter of each chapter is, and then to focus on 2 chapters. Chapter 32, which is about the 2.5 tribes who want land on the east side of the Jordan River, and that dynamic. And then chapter 35, cities of refuge. And then we'll conclude with a couple of the last verses of the book of Numbers and congratulate ourselves on finishing yet another book of Torah, which is really wonderful to be able to do. Okay, so I see myself 3 subjects in each of these 2 Torah portions. So in matot, which is a word for tribes, there are these 3 subject matters. The making and annulling of vows, very, very important idea. Promising, being in a certain way, and not only promising, but carrying out your promise. Promising, there's a lovely book by John Austin. Is that his name, John Austin? How to Do Things with Words. Austin, a British philosopher of the last century. And Austin's view is that things like promising are not only descriptive of what we've done, I've made a promise, but they also create a reality. The reality being obligation. And then that obligation stands over and against me as a potential rebuke if I don't carry out my promise. So Austin's view is that promising is one of the pillars, the foundations of a coherent society. If we don't keep our promises, then we can't be trusted, and our word is no longer valuable, and social interaction becomes problematic, if not impossible. So the making and annulling of vows is an important idea. As Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi Sachs says in his book, in a certain way, that idea of promising not only brings Numbers to a conclusion, but it is a kind of foundation for movement into the promised land and the creation of community on their own. So that his view is not only is the whole issue of vows a topic within the book of Numbers, but it also lays a foundation without saying so to what is coming next. And as you may remember, the book of Deuteronomy has no narrative whatsoever. Now that's false that I've now said that, but it does not push the narrative forward. That's what I want to say. At the end of the book of Numbers, the Israelites are on the brink of crossing the Jordan River and going to the Promised Land. So Deuteronomy is a kind of timeout for both a review and dealing with Moses and Joshua. So as we approach the end of Numbers, we are just a few minutes away, literary minutes, from going into the Promised Land. So that idea that the subject of vows becomes an important issue for the possibility of a coherent, trustworthy society is happening right before they get into the Promised Land. If you get what I'm saying, we could bring Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy doesn't cover any time. So at the end of Numbers, we're just a few minutes away from going into the Promised Land, literarily speaking. I hope that makes sense to you. I have no idea what I just said. Stammering to that sense, but you get the idea. So there's the issue of the making and annulling of vows, the retaliatory war against the Midianites takes an entire chapter, and then we have the cities of refuge, where 2.5 tribes asked to stay on the east side of the Jordan, and that's what we'll look at. Then there are the so-called 42 encampments of the Israelites from Egypt on the plains of Moab. There's a kind of review of the various ways in which the people have come together. And then there's an interesting chapter, kind of a confusing one, on the boundaries, the borders of the land of Israel, which itself is a very interesting topic. Several places in the Tanakh deal with the question of the borders and the boundaries. There's a review of it, I think, in the book of Joshua. I think the prophet Ezekiel deals with it as well, and they do not fit together coherently. So we could look to the ancient text for the question, what are the boundaries of the modern state of Israel, and look at biblical sources and not come up with anything definitive. After all, the book of Numbers thinks that the east bank of the Jordan River, modern-day Jordan, is also a part of the land of Israel. And you may remember, just as an historical note, that after World War I, the Allies divided that land up and gave to Palestine, gave to the Yishuv, the settlement in Israel, both the west of the Jordan and east of the Jordan. And then it came, so this was like 1919, I think, at Versailles. Within a few years, in 1922, the so-called Churchill Memorandum eliminated that east of the Jordan for the Jewish people, so that initially the boundaries of the land that we see at the end of Numbers was replicated by the Versailles Treaty, but then almost immediately taken back. Okay? So, our passage and other passages are contributions to the question of boundaries, but there's no definitive answer to it. All right, so the encampments of the Israelites, the boundaries of the land of Israel, and then the establishment of the cities of refuge for, the Hebrew says for murder, but it doesn't mean murder because murder is premeditated, for manslaughter. So a murder that was not premeditated, and therefore the culpability becomes a problem. You can imagine that families are not going to stand by easily when the one who killed their loved ones is now given a place of refuge. So the cities of refuge are a kind of an attempt to thread the needle between revenge on the part of the murdered one's family and the need for justice, because manslaughter requires some judicial process to decide whether or not it was culpable or accidental. So the cities of refuge are a kind of solution to that ambiguity until it is dealt with. So several independent issues in the last 7 chapters of the book of Numbers. One can think of it, I think of it, as I've just said, as rushing through. But you could also imagine it as the editors are saying, what topics have we not covered fully enough yet? Let's just put them all together there so we know we've taken care of them without any sense of, what I might say, development or internal coherence, so on. So that's the feeling I get from these last double portions, and that it is a double portion. One of them, in other words, in leap years, you need each of the doubled portions. But in non-leap years, you don't need them, and therefore you double it up. Okay, so let's look here at chapter 32 of Numbers and see what we have here. Okay. The Reubenites and the Gadites owned cattle in very great numbers, noting that the lands of Yazer and Gilead were a region suitable for cattle. The Gadites and the Reubenites came to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the chieftains of the community, and said, these various places, Aterot, Devon, Yazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, El-Elah, Savam, Nevo, and Beon, the land that the Lord has conquered for the community of Israel, is, that was a long parenthetical, is cattle country, and your servants have cattle. It would be a favor to us, they continue. The Hebrew for it would be a favor to us is if we have found favor in your eyes, right? Vayomru, and they said, Imatzanu, if we have found chen, grace, be'enecha, which is translated here, would be a favor to us, which I think is a decent translation. It would be a favor to us, they continued, if this land were given to your servants as a holding. Do not move us across the Jordan. So they are encamped on the east bank of the Jordan River, ready to cross into the promised land. And these 2 tribes, it will turn out that half Menashe, half of the tribe of Menashe, is also in on this, but they're not brought into the conversation here. They are saying that we have found something favorable to us. In other words, they focus on themselves, fertile land for our cattle. Let us not continue as a part of the people, the rest of the people, as they move across the Jordan to move forward the promise of the land of Israel to whom? The whole people. The 12 tribes, or we might say, the community. Okay? Now, what these 2 tribes, or 2.5 tribes, are saying is, we are putting our own need ahead of the coherence of the community. Okay? Because there's pasture land for our cattle. So, without saying so at this point, this is a crisis. This is a bringing forward of the question of the individual and the community here on the collective level. One individual, namely 2.5 tribes. You see what I'm saying? I'm raising the more philosophical question of the one and the many. In a community, one would think that the one includes the many, but the one may want to break off for a variety of reasons, one of which may be self-serving. And therefore the community norm is broken and sets a precedent for schisms. Right? So what these tribes are doing is something quite problematic. Now, if we look at verse 5, so look, I mean, these tribes from the beginning are saying something. And then in verse 5 it begins, and they said, but nobody has spoken in between what was said before and what's said now. If I'm saying something to you and somebody's recording it, and I say something, and then I say, and now I'm going to say, as if you have said something in between. I've said something, you've said something, and now I'm going to have to say, and now I have to say. By saying Vayomru, they said, without anything in between, can be read, whether we buy this or not, that something has happened in between, so that the author has to say, we're going to resume talking, without saying what that was. So this locution suggests that Moses, to whom they're saying this, is already in the process of reacting. But his reaction is not brought here, so that this apparent interruption leads to resuming the conversation. You don't have to say, and they said, if they're the only ones who have been speaking. Okay? So just this grammatical nicety suggests some tension already. Because what I've suggested is that they are asking for something quite problematic, both in particular and as a principle. Does the individual, do a subset of the tribes have the right to break off and tend to their own interests? Ellen?
It sounds like there's enormous amounts of cattle that they need this grazing land.
Yeah.
And they were complaining they had nothing to eat
When did they do that?
when they had manna.
Oh, well, this was a long time ago.
Well, but they must have brought these cattle along.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay, a little bit of a
so they were
problem.
selfish from the beginning.
Okay, well, I don't know that follows, actually. That's an interesting comment. The author may not recognize that there is a little bit of an issue here, because this is, in a way, starting over again with another episode. So let's go on. Moses replied to the Gadites and the Reubenites, "Are your brothers to go to war while you stay here?" So Moses gets the problem. Why will you turn? And notice that Moses is quite emphatic, even angry. So there's not only a crisis in the issues, but there's a crisis of conversation. The crisis is mirrored in the conversation. They've said X. Moses says, "Well, wait a minute. How dare you say this?" So again, in the process of moving to the promised land, here is yet another kind of crisis which the Torah is dealing with. Verse 7. Why will you turn the minds of the Israelites from crossing into the land that the Lord has given to them? You're placing some doubts in the mind of the Israelites. If you want to stay here on the east side of the Jordan because of some felicity, maybe this is better than the land of Israel itself. And so by your wanting to do this, you're not only separating yourself off, but you're creating doubt in the mind of the people. That is what your fathers did when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to survey the land. Well, Numbers 13 and 14. And you remember the spies came back, and 10 of them said, "There's no way we can do this. It's terrifying. The people are great. The cities are fortified. We can't go in." So a crisis of the spirit, the human spirit is now deeply troubled, but also the crisis of the journey to the promised land on behalf of the people. Okay? So Moses refers to a precedent where this happened, which intensifies the problem. This looks like another example of dispiriting a people just as they're about to realize the first stage of the journey, the first end stage of the journey, getting there. I say first stage because getting there is not yet the fulfillment of the promise, as the prophets very powerfully say over and over again. We've talked about the notion of the promise of the promised land. The promised land, getting there for the prophets, is not enough. It's only a precondition for creating a just and compassionate society. That's why I call it that they're about to realize the first stage of the occupation, and not we're there and everything is hunky-dory. Okay? So back to verse 8. That is what your fathers did when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to survey the land. After going up to the Wadi Eshcol and surveying the land, they turned the mind of the Israelites from invading the land that the Lord had given them. Thereupon the Lord was incensed, and he swore, none of the men from 20 years up who came out of Egypt shall see the land that I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for they did not remain loyal to me. Don't you love what Moses has done here? He has referred to a past and similar crisis. And then he goes back from Numbers 32 to Numbers 13 and 14. And then he goes back to Genesis, given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which I think is an act of rhetorical brilliance. In other words, if I want to make a case, I'm going to try to say something about the case itself. Let's examine what's going on here. I can intensify my case by referring to a parallel occasion in which this very thing happened. So it makes it all the more problematic. Now, if I go all the way back to the patriarchs, I'm suggesting that what you are proposing here is not only a problem at this moment, it's the kind of problem we have faced before. And it really is not only interrupting our movement now, but the whole arc of the movement to the Promised Land, which is one of the goals of the entire book, of the entire Torah from the very beginning. So, I mean, Moses is really gathering rhetorical potential for deepening our understanding of the crisis. Finally, what you're doing is you are endangering the arc of our journey. Lech lecha me'artzecha. Leave your father's land, the land in which you were, and go to the land that I will show you. And I will promise you this land. I mean, before the 7th or 8th verse of Genesis 12, the beginning of the story, before the 7th or 8th verse has been articulated, the ark has been opened up, A-R-C, right? Not A-R-K. Okay? So this, once again, is rhetorical brilliance on the part of the authors who create this argument in the mouth of Moses. So, verse 9. After going up to the Wadi Eshcol and surveying the land, they, the spies, earlier in Numbers, turned the minds of the Israelites from invading the land that the Lord had given them. Thereupon, and by the way, had given them, the pluperfect. It's already given before they get there. It's not given when you get there. When will I get the gift that you've promised me? When you go pick it up? No. When you promise me the gift, it's already mine. Okay, the Lord had given them. Thereupon the Lord was incensed, verse 10, and he swore, none of the men from 20 years up who came out of Egypt shall see the land that I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for they did not remain loyal to me. None except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, the son of Nun, for they remained loyal to the Lord. Okay, so Moses now elaborates on what exactly happened at that moment in Numbers 13 and 14. And it was decided, that's the moment when God determined that nobody who came out of Egypt gets into the promised land, on the assumption, not articulated in this way, that you can take the people out of Egypt, but you can't take Egypt out of the people. And so once having cultivated the ethos, I might say, the habits of being a servant, slaves, it's going to be hard to become a fully free people. So it was at this moment that this happened. Okay? Notice what Moses is doing here. He's taking a simple request of these tribes. Look, this is good land for the cattle. Let us stay here. And he's creating a massive rebuke of what they're doing, what they're proposing. Okay? So we might say, in terms of the issue of the one and the many, the individual and the community, that Moses is arguing for community coherence without any bowing to the need of the individual. Okay? So the question remains, what about the request of those tribes? Does it have some validity, not only in its own terms, but as an assertion of the importance of the individual as well as the community? Okay? Because finally they get what they want. So the whole story does suggest, though there is a crisis here, and we have to acknowledge there's a crisis and deal with it, nevertheless, what the individual tribe or tribes, the subgroup, wants is not only valid in its own sake, but it creates a principle that the dignity, the power of the individual in this worldview also has its claims over and against the community norm. The tension remains. So let's continue here. Verse 13. The Lord was incensed at Israel, and for 40 years he made them wander in the wilderness until the whole generation that had provoked the Lord's displeasure was gone. And now you, a breed of sinful men, have replaced your fathers to add still further to the Lord's wrath against Israel. Moses very adroitly subsumes them under the understood sinfulness of the 10 spies who have created that crisis, okay? So for Moses, this is not a separate incident. This is just another example of the same idea. And now I'm going to do verse 14 again. You, a breed of sinful men, have replaced your fathers to add still further to the Lord's wrath against Israel. If you turn away from him and he abandons them once more in the wilderness, you will bring calamity upon all this people. And no one word accomplishes what Moses is saying, because what he's saying is, this will be the end. I mean, because we had two good spies, Joshua and Caleb, back there in Numbers 13, 14, they were able to redeem or to allow the process to continue. Now you guys are going to close it all off. Verse 16, then they stepped up to him. Yeah, and the Hebrew is vayigshu. They approached. They not only said, but they're moving their bodies, so to speak, toward Moses. They stepped up to him and they said, We will build here sheepfolds for our flocks and towns for our children. Let me pause here just as an aside. So the commentaries make a big deal out of what has just been said, because what these three tribe spokespeople have said is we will build sheepfolds for our flocks and towns for our children. They get the order of priority wrong. They're interested in gain rather than the next generation. And I think that Moses reverses it when he replies. I don't remember, but let's see. So you can see that, for example, Samson Raphael Hirsch, who is the founder in Europe of modern orthodoxy in the 19th century, said the first thing that a group of Jews should do when they move into a new area is build a schoolhouse for their children. I mean, we also think of a cemetery as the first thing that we do. But for Hirsch, the education of the children is a key not only to the present but to the future. And I don't know if, because Hirsch wrote a vast commentary on the 5 books of Moses, I should have checked it, whether or not he points to this particular verse as perverse. Okay, but, I mean, none of that is in the verse, is it? This is just a statement. Hey, Moses. Hey, Samson. Don't take this so seriously. We're just making a comment. But, the infinities of interpretability that exist in every word in the Torah is an axiom of rabbinic commentary, right? It's filled with meaning, if only we were adroit enough to find it. Okay, so we will build here sheepfolds for our flocks and towns for our children. In other words, their response is, we intend to do this. We are not acceding to your argument automatically. And we will hasten. So, verse 16, we're going to take care of ourselves. Verse 17, but we also get the power of your argument. And we intend to be not only an individual set of tribes, but also part of the larger community. And we will, verse 17, hasten as shock troops in the van of the Israelites until we have established them in their home, while our children stay in the fortified towns because of the inhabitants of the land. Okay? So we're gonna place our people there. We're going to propose that we're going to do this, but we're going to come with the people to help the conquest of the land. In other words, we're going to rejoin the community. And not only rejoin the community, we're going to be in the vanguard. We're going to be the shock troops. We get your point, Moses. We're not giving in entirely. We mean to inhabit this land on the east bank. But we see our obligation to the community, even to the compensatory degree. We're going to compensate for our apparent selfishness by saying we're not just going in, but we're going to be leaders. So there's something quite, I think, emotionally powerful about saying we're going to be in the vanguard, because to me it represents an understanding of the problem inherent in their view. So they're trying to compensate for it without relenting. It's quite complicated, isn't it? So, verse 17 again, and we will hasten as shock troops in the van of the Israelites till we have established them in their home, while our children stay in the fortified towns because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until every one of the Israelites is in possession of his portion. Oh, if only they knew what was to come, right? One battle, some victories, some defeats after another, the whole book of Joshua. Basically by Joshua 12, there's a cessation of hostilities, not forever. But the first 11 chapters are replete with those things. We'll not return to our homes until every one of the Israelites is in possession of his portion. You know, I wonder as I think about that psychologically, they've said something they can't really bring to realization on their own. We're going to finish the job, which strikes me as a kind of compensation for the problem in their initial position. They're overcompensating. We're not only going to help, we're going to help until the whole job is completed. But we will not have a share with them in the territory beyond the Jordan, for we have received our share on the east side of the Jordan. And Moses said to them, if you do this, if you go to battle as shock troops at the instance of the Lord, and every shock fighter among you crosses the Jordan at the instance of the Lord, right? So he's bringing God in more than once in order to give the divine imprimatur on this compromise. That's what this is. This has been a negotiation in which the needs of each party, let's call it each party, the 2.5 tribes and Moses representing the rest, has been trying to come up with a compromise that accommodates the needs of both parties, right? It's not that Moses insists on giving up your aspiration. Moses is saying, okay, you can have it if you also participate in what the community needs. Verse 20, Moses said to them, if you do this, if you go to battle as shock troops at the instance of the Lord, and every shock fighter among you crosses the Jordan at the instance of the Lord, until he has dispossessed his enemies before him, and the land has been subdued at the instance of the Lord, it's like writing a contract. And here are the terms. Each of these terms have to be accomplished in order for us to validate your individual need. So let's go back and recognize the different features of this agreement. So, verse 20, and Moses said that if you do this, if you go to battle as shock troops at the instance of the Lord, and every shock fighter among you crosses the Jordan at the instance of the Lord, until he has dispossessed his enemy before him. So this is a holy war. This is a war done in the name of God. That's who you're fighting for. You're fighting for God and God's promise. And verse 22, the land has been subdued at the instance of the Lord. And then you return, you shall be clear before the Lord and before Israel. I love that. You shall be cleared in the eyes of two entities. The people, we will all agree that you now have a right, you've earned the right for this land. But this is also God's plan that is being pulled off here. This is not a secular move. This is the fulfillment of what God has long promised. So you shall be clear before the Lord and before Israel. And this land shall be your holding under the Lord. Notice how many times God's name is invoked here. As if not only is this process God's process that you're implementing, but this particular crisis is something that imperils this divinely led process. But if you do not do so, you will have sinned against the Lord, and know that your sin will overtake you. Build towns. Okay, so I was looking at the Hebrew, so it's an imperative, benu. Build lachem arim. Build towns for your children and sheepfolds for your flocks, but do what you have promised. So the Gadites and the Reubenites answered Moses, your servants will do as my Lord commands. Notice the negotiation that took place here, which leads both parties to be satisfied. This is a kind of an ideal way to understand the elements of asserting what you think is right for you, but also coming to recognize that you're part of a community and you have some obligations, and they say what they're going to be doing. And what they're going to be doing is, not as the 10.5 tribes go into the promised land, they're not standing behind and polishing the armor. We'll go across and we'll help you guys. No, we'll go across and we will be completely committed to the goal of crossing the Jordan River and going into the promised land. We accept the need of the community in its most stringent sense. And we're going to be in the vanguard. And Moses says, now, if you do this, you're free to do what you want to do. So crisis averted through negotiation, the goodwill of the parties, which lead to a resolution where both parties are satisfied. They get what they want, but the community is going to get what it wants as well, as full of force as possible, whatever the outcome, so that both needs are met without altercation or irresolution. Verse 25, the Gadites and the Reubenites answered Moses, your servants will do as my Lord commands. Our children, our wives, our flocks, and all our other livestock will stay behind in the towns of Gilead. While your servants, all those recruited for war, cross over, your servants. In other words, we accept what you want as right. We're going to serve your express need at the instance of the Lord to engage in battle as my Lord orders. Then Moses gave instructions concerning them to Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of Nun, and the family heads of the Israel tribes. Moses said to them, if every shock fighter among the Gadites and the Reubenites cross the Jordan with you to do battle at the entrance of the Lord, and the land is subdued before you, you shall give them the land of Gilead as a holding. Gee, I love that, don't you? That now Moses is saying to the 10.5 tribes, here's the deal. If they do it, you must be willing to acknowledge their need, because the bargain is they get what they want as long as they serve the larger community. So in terms of the permission, it's not only Moses who is giving permission, it's not only God who is giving permission, it's the people themselves that are brought into the acknowledgement of this bargain. Jean?
I'm just curious. Do we know if they did this?
That's a good point. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if the Torah then goes on to say this happened. Anybody know? David?
I'm sorry. If the Torah said, in Joshua it says this happened.
Does Joshua say?
Yes.
In the book of Joshua.
Yes.
He says that all the tribes, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, yes. And we're going to hold David responsible. Okay, so we'll search the documents, the data. Okay, very good. So, verse 30. But if they do not cross over with you as shock troops, they shall receive holdings among you in the land of Canaan. Okay? So in other words, they won't be able to do.
I don't understand that.
I think what it means is, I get your puzzlement. I think what Moses is presupposing is, you all have to go over and inhabit the land. You're asking for an exception. We're going to allow the exception if you do X. If you don't do X, no exception. You're going to come over too. Verse 30, but if they do not, he's saying this to the other tribes, if they do not cross over with you as shock troops, they shall receive holdings among you in the land of Canaan. Does that make sense to you? You seem to have a little problem with it. Don't you think that's what it's got to mean, so to speak? They're looking for an exception. They get it on certain conditions. If they don't fulfill the conditions, they don't get it, which means the 2.5 tribes are not thrown out of the group. They're just going to have to perform what we might call the condition, the condition before we're looking at this problem. Steve?
If you look at the promised land as sort of a fixed size, Moses is saying the 2.5 tribes will then have to occupy the fixed amount of land and essentially take land away from the other tribe. So he's kind of sweetening the deal for the 10.5 to say, you should allow these 2.5 tribes to do what they want, because if you don't, you'll all be sharing the land and have to divide it up among the 12 as opposed to among the 10 and 10.5.
Right.
I mean, that's what I'm taking from it.
I think it's a good point. What Steve is suggesting is that Moses, as negotiator, has another card up his sleeve. If you don't buy the logic of the agreement here, think of self-interest. Self-interest is the fewer among whom the land needs to be divided, the more each group gets. I like it. Yeah.
There seems, the way I'm reading this and this whole story, it seems like they're retrojecting in that the entrance to the land was crossing the Jordan, and then they find themselves hundreds of years later with these 2.5 tribes on the other side of the Jordan, and they're trying to explain how this actually happened.
Yeah.
It feels a little like they're recreating the history, so this whole complicated narrative and so on is to come up with a valid story to explain the facts on the ground.
It's an interesting point. Let me put it this way. What Steve is suggesting is that often there is a need for the storyteller to catch up with the facts of the matter. There's a gap here. I like it. What's not to like about it? Yeah.
We can move on.
No, I know it.
There seems to be a cloud over this whole thing. It seems a little like an artificial explanation.
Yeah, I get that up to a point, but as a separate point, not an attempt to diminish what you're saying, is that is it important? What is the historical record? The historical record is a series of facts and dates, okay? What we might call a chronicle. But authors, communities from time immemorial have tried to derive meaning from the facts. What's the meaning of history, and not just what is a chronicle of events in chronological order? So I might say that even though I think you've got a powerful point, I'm sure there is a lot of that going on. Nevertheless, the author is trying to catch up with the data, but in the doing, the author is making some powerful and profound observations about the issue of the individual need versus the community need. So, yeah.
But Steve has answered my question.
Sorry?
Steve has answered my question. Now I understand that the point of this verse about if they don't go, that's Moses convincing the people that it's a good deal for them.
Yes. Yeah. So you're in what sense is yours complementing Steve's point? you're making a point about the rhetorical challenge here. How does Moses convince the other tribes? Steve is making the point here about.
Well, he made that point.
I make 2 points.
Okay, yeah, right. But I like the idea here that the telling of the story follows the facts and tries to make sense of it. And well, that's what historians do, don't they? Sometimes, yeah. Well, no, maybe always. I mean, why does an historian pick up a pen and write something? Not just to replicate the data, but to try to say what the meaning of this process is. And the historian lays it out in front of the reader. Does this seem like a plausible reading of those? And what makes plausibility? I suppose inherently is the description work, but it doesn't contribute to a larger sense of the meaning, let's say the meaning of America. What does the demise of Reconstruction in 1876 mean not only at that point, but what does it mean about the meaning of America, how the process is both moved forward and retarded? And what does it have to do with today? The author might be intimating. I mean, look, I'll make a personal comment here. We may have entered in a second era of Jim Crow. The restriction, the reduction of the rights of minorities. So all the more so, the dynamic of 1876, the disputed election, how it was thrown into the House, and I think Rutherford B. Hayes gets the presidency by conceding that we're going to end Reconstruction. We're going to pull the troops out of the South. Well, that's an event. What's the meaning of the event in the larger panorama? So I'm not sure this is a good example of what you're saying, but still it's the issue of event and meaning as, if we think that today is the inception of Jim Crow Part 2, we might go back to 1876 and read it even more intensely as another brick in the edifice of what America is. Promise and reneging on the promise might be one theme. Arthur?
So a couple things. One is, I never noticed before, first of all, I really appreciate slowing down looking at these passages because you see a lot of stuff when you slow down and
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah.
But I think in verse 21 and many of the word shock truth is chalutz. So I grew up thinking a chalutz was a guy with a beanie, bringing the desert to bloom,
Yeah.
chalutz, more avodah, all that business.
Yes.
But it sounds like chalutz means the shock truth
Yeah.
for conquest.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the people reviving Hebrew knew about these passages.
Yeah.
So that's curious. The other is, I don't know, I'm sure I'm not alone in sharing that I've had tumult in my family through generational inheritance. And this, another way to put this problem is each generation has different needs. So you might set up a family or a community in a certain direction, and then a new generation comes along.
Yeah.
And they actually have different needs. Now, what do you do about that? In modern American story, it fractures the family. You don't find a way to bind it together again, so that's interesting. And lastly, we think of the promised land as God-given. God promised the land.
Yeah.
But here we have a patch of land that was not given by God.
Are you sure you're saying that the East Bank wasn't given by God?
Well, it doesn't say that, you're in the promised land, who's going to get this piece? It looks like it's Reuben's idea that this will be promised. Reuben comes up with the idea that this will be part of the territory of the promised land. It's not like God said at Mount Sinai or somewhere before they got there that this patch will belong to somebody, and Reuben says, well, I'd like it to be me. Reuben says, I know it's not part of the territory. So it opens up the idea that people can determine what's the promised land, not just God.
Yeah, and that's in history. That's what's happened since World War I. But I wonder, in order to secure your point, we might want to look at the various claims in the Tanakh about what is the land. And if it includes the East Bank as something promised by God, then you're not right. If it doesn't, and it may not, I mean, I don't remember any description of the boundaries of the land, at least up to this point, which include, so I think it's a good.
Also, if it was a promised land, Moses got to the promised land.
Yes.
Oh, if, I see what you're saying. If the East Bank was the part of the promised land, then Moses gets there. Yeah. Which is certainly not the intent of, is it?
He's standing there, right?
Because God has said you don't get to go in. And Moses says, hey, wait a minute, I'm here. No, it's an interesting point, which seems to suggest your larger point, that this is not part of the promised land, but Reuben's idea.
It's Reuben land.
It's Reuben land. Okay. Ivan.
Just following up on Arthur's point and what Steve said, I read a commentator and he made a point that there were two additional benefits that the community or Moses got by this deal. The first one was he created a buffer zone, but this was a land with a lot of warring tribes and the Ammonites and the Moabites and everything. And by having this separate entity in the East Bank, he created a buffer zone to create the other 10 tribes from these hostile neighbors.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I like that. I like that.
The other point this commentator made was he really harped on the fact that it was the Reubenites who wanted to stay, who didn't want to cross, and Moses had problems with the Reubenites with the Korah rebellion,
Yeah.
because Reuben was the firstborn, and they wanted the political power as the firstborn. So this was a mark of genius by Moses to say to the Reubenites, who could have been perpetual problems,
If they had gone over.
if they had gone over, say, fine, you stay over there, leave us alone, so we don't have to deal with your ancestors saying, you're the firstborn, you should be in charge.
Oh, that's so interesting. So that both you and Steve are suggesting that Moses has a much richer set of needs than the negotiation itself brings forward. It looks like a logical process. You want X, you can't get X at the expense of Y, because you have obligation to Y. If you agree that we're going to satisfy Y's need, then we'll allow you to have your need. That seems to be the transparent logic of this discussion, which suggests to the casual reader, of which I was one, that that's all there is to it. I mean, if an argument follows a logical order, we want X, you don't get X unless you satisfy Y. You satisfy Y, you get X. What could be more airtight than that? Both of you have suggested that Moses had some other motivations in mind, mollifying the other tribes, getting back at Reuben, creating a buffer zone. All of these are, I mean, these are not just stabs in the dark. These are plausible additional motivations. So you wonder here, I mean, in a certain way, I love so much the logic of the negotiation, that they really, in a rational way, face a crisis and find a way out on the plain meaning of the text. The plain meaning is sufficient. But now it's all complicated by potential other plausible motivations. Wow. So there's the Roger Klein Moses, who is rational, and boy, does he do an amazing job. Then there is the position of the dissidents. No, I'm just kidding. Who bring up some other plausible things here, making it really, in a sense, a more human than strictly logical conversation, which really enriches because it brings in other elements of the story, the Reubenites and so on. What must the other tribes be thinking, and so on. I like it. Michael?
I've had two thoughts in my head at the same time, and I've been trying to figure out which one dominates, but Arthur's comment gave me the answer, so I think. So the question I have is this a sort of a endorsement of the value of conquest, in the sense, I'm thinking to myself, what gives Moses the jurisdiction over the East Bank to be able to bargain it away? And basically what he says is, gee, if we look at the territory west of the Jordan, we have to split it up among, 9.5, 10.5? Whereas if we take this other land on the east, the other way around, if we take the other land on the east, then we only have to split it up among 10.5 of us, and if we don't, then we have to split it up among 12.
Yes.
So let's just take the extra land. And what gives him the authority to do that?
That's a good point.
That's one.
It's somebody else's land, after all.
Yeah. Well, either it is or it isn't, right? But the other point that I was struggling with, you can choose which one you want to respond to, is your use of the term individual in reference to the Reubenites, which is not, it's really a class in an Enlightenment sense. It's not individuals.
I meant it metaphorically.
Yeah. But it's the metaphor isn't really a.
Okay, why is that?
Well, if you buy into the sanctity of the individual and enlightenment.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I get that. From an Enlightenment perspective, I'm wrong. I was just talking about a unit. You know that.
Well,
You get
there's
it.
a tension.
Okay.
There's still a tension.
What is the tension?
Either way, there's a tension between the individual and the group, and there's a tension between the community and the classes in the community. Right?
That's right.
But we actually make a distinction between those.
Yes. Good. I really like your point about, you remember, was it Herzl? I can't remember, it was Herzl, who said, my goal is to take a people without a land to a land without a people, on the assumption the land is empty. How great would that have been if that were the case? How unlikely is it? So, this is part of what we might call the ideology, that you have to feel that legitimizes what you're doing. And the Torah, I think you're really right, the Torah never raises the question.
No doubt about that.
No doubt about it at all. Other parts of the story talk about who's living over there. So, but even without those references, you wouldn't. This can't be a fully empty land. That's another issue. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you see the Torah this way. So it's Reuben and Gad who are right now asking for this that we've been reading. We're almost there, but Moses is going to assign a portion of Manasseh to go with them.
Yes.
Reuben and Gad are from Leah.
Okay.
Manasseh is from Rachel.
Wow.
So, I think there's
I hadn't thought of that.
He's trying to keep, he's having this deja vu moment from, earlier on. He's trying to keep everyone together, kind of trying to, keep the fractures of the, so I think there is this motif of the birth mothers that runs throughout the whole Tanakh.
No, I like that. What you're introducing into the story is another conflict. And on the assumption that Moses is trying to resolve all the possible conflicts aside from the logic, this may be another one. I mean, you brought in Reuben as a tribe, but you're suggesting that another conflict, which has been simmering all along, we might say, between the children of Leah and the children of Rachel, this might be another attempt to bring the two together. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. I want to be sure that Doris.
I think it's worth noting that this negotiation started very respectfully, very deferentially, very elegantly, with a question from the Reubenites and the Gadites. Very different from the way the crisis began with Torah a few weeks ago,
Yes.
which was with an attack. Here we don't have an attack, we have a very gentle question. We were thinking, given the capital situation, of an idea. How about if we stay on the east side? Well, the tone is so different and so kind and so thoughtful and so peaceful. It's a question.
Yeah.
Moses responds to type, he's the leader, but isn't it interesting how they respect the leadership to begin with the question? We come to you, to Eleazar, to the chieftains, you have all the authority. We have a question. They are rebuffed. Moses says, no, absolutely no. You're creating a problem. They don't go to plan B, the Gadites and the Reubenites. They go back to their plan A and strengthen it. They do it. Moses doesn't say, I am imposing these things on you. They figure them out for themselves. And it results in a very win-win situation, actually, at the end.
I love that.
It began well. And a negotiation that begins well has so much more opportunity for success.
And by well, you mean a recognition of the dignity of the other party.
A sensitivity to it.
A sense of?
A sensitivity.
A sensitivity.
An acknowledgement of it very clearly. You have the power,
I like
and
that.
we respect that power.
Back to verse 5. It would be a favor to us, they continued, if this land were given to your servants, and so on. And then their claim in Moses' rebuff ends at verse 15. If you turn away from him, God, and he abandons them once more in the wilderness, you'll bring calamity upon this people. No, you can't do this. Verse 16. Then they stepped forward and said, they make the offer. They're trying to keep it. So just as Steve's point about the idea of mollifying other groups or the main groups, you're talking about mollifying as well. It's not only the what, it's the how. So this is also a lesson, we might say, if we want to get lessons out of this, about how to engage in a negotiation where the parties are having a disagreement, how to create the possibility of hearing one another. I like that very, very. There's so much in here. Vivian?
I'm so grateful to Doris for saying that, because I've been obsessing over the word Vaishu, which you pointed out to us early in the conversation, because that goes back to Vayigash. Judah goes to Joseph and says, wait a minute, I'm your servant, everything's good, but still, you can't take Benjamin and it'll kill our father.
Mm-hmm.
Take me instead.
Yeah.
So it's a it's the same kind of respectful, as Doris points out, it's this respectful negotiation where he offers a solution
that.
in a different way.
I like that. So Vivian is bringing in not only the process, but yet another episode, which in some structural sense mirrors this episode, how to resolve conflict. I like that. Yeah. Jim?
Well, the Reubenites, Gadionites, aside from the group, sort of a prototype for the diaspora, Jews away from the main group. And fast forward to what you were talking about in 1918, 1919, which is kind of interesting to me because in that period in Eastern Europe, there was a group of Jews that realized things weren't going too well for them. They migrated to Palestine and started buying property from the Arabs, which creates the question of boundaries now, because the Arabs, in a quick amount of time, started resenting all the Jews owning their land, despite the fact that their standard of living had gone up. It was in relation to the, might sound silly, but they developed a specific type of orange, which got distributed all over Europe. That area of Palestine became very well off, but the resentment remains to this day, which has an aside of where are the boundaries.
Well, that's the issue today, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So is your point that they tried to do it legally, they bought the land rather than just conquering it?
But it was a result of the diaspora. The Jews ended up in Eastern Europe as a result of not being with the main group for various and assorted reasons.
Yeah, interesting. Malcolm?
I wonder if God had to do this over again, if he would have decided to promise something other than land to the people. The chapter is a bit disappointing in the sense of, I mean, it's necessary and it illustrates to us, we're inferring or assigning motive and behaviors here, which we've gone to bring forward even to the present day.
Yeah.
But we didn't have this, at least in my recall, I don't recall didn't have the same debates among the people around the building of the tabernacle. There was, and God didn't give the people a map of the land of Israel to say, here it is, these are the boundaries. And so these people, as they're approaching a land, are now saying, well, this part and that part and this part and who gets what, and here we are in 2026. And so again, I don't know what else, and I understand the importance of land inherently to an ancient people and to people today. But,
Yes. But what?
I wonder if there was something I could have promised.
Promised,
No,
right.
we wouldn't have fought something or struggled so much.
You know, there is a movement in Eastern Europe in the 19th century known as diaspora nationalism, whose founder was the great historian Simon Dubnov, who wrote a vast history. And Dubnov's view is the Jewish people is a nation, but a necessary condition for flourishing as a nation is not land. We can do it in the diaspora. Now, I don't know what the fate of that movement was. Well, maybe we do know. It raises an interesting question, as is land a sine qua non, a necessary condition for the coherence of a community? Or can it be, as you point out, religion, I mean, after all, the tabernacle, the ark, the Ner Tamid, these are all symbols of what the Jewish people is and has. It's possession without land. And could we do it? I mean, well, American Judaism is doing it. The diaspora does it. And there's a question about how viable is the diaspora over and against millennial hatred and so on, which raises its head from time to time. But it's an interesting question. So Malcolm's idea is, I'm going to put an idea in your head. I'm going to draw an idea. And that is, don't tell anybody I said this. I don't mean it. Did God make a mistake? That's your question. Could there have been diaspora, non-land-centered nationalism? I mean, on the assumption that we want to be a people, something collective, but does one need land in order to flourish as a collective? Diaspora Judaism has done it, haven't we? So the Torah would have been the book of Genesis. We don't, Exodus, Leviticus, we might need Leviticus. No Joshua. No, but that's an intriguing idea. Is the problem land itself, something concrete, particular, over which people might fight? Mike's point about there were people living there, so we might presume that there was going to be some conflict here because two people wanted the same territory. Vivian?
Well, this is such an interesting turn of questions because it brings me back to exactly where you started.
Yeah.
And this question seems probably really self-evident and will be to you, but my question is, and first of all, the other promise was generations.
Yeah.
So what, and maybe this would help if I knew the Hebrew words, but what is the difference between covenant and promise? Covenant is obligation and contract. Promise is what? And what is the Hebrew word for promise? And when is is Israel or the designated as the promised land in Torah?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as one commentator, who is it that said this? Oh, I know who. That the promised land is a promising land, and a promising land requires living in a certain way. But look, the word covenant is applied to both bilateral agreement, I'll do this if you do that, and also God makes a covenant to give the people the land of Israel in perpetuity, for which you don't have to do anything to earn it. That's the non-obligatory covenant. So your point might be that if God promised the generations as something absolute that does not require any reciprocity in order to maintain it, why do we need the land at all? This is just a, yeah.
And we're also called the children of Israel.
B'nai Israel.
You're the children.
Okay, so where are we in our discussion here? So we've talked about the what have we done? What have we done here? We've talked about the logic of the negotiation. Then we've expanded it to other kinds of motivation that the different discussants have in mind and the problems. Then we have turned to questioning the very assumption of that entire negotiation, that the land is not only crucial, but it's ours. And we know the problems because there's never enough land to go around. On the other hand, look, let's face it though, land gives some sense of protection that perhaps that the Ark and the Ner Tamid don't give, something concrete on which a people can recognize its corporate nature. But we've gone from, so this table over here, not everybody at the table is worried about the very notion of land, which really this chapter presupposes. The issue is there's going to be land, there are going to be inhabitants. The question is who lives where and on what ground. I want to be sure that those who haven't spoken yet. Okay, Ellen?
I think you're using the word meaning repetitively.
I'm using the word meaning.
Meaning.
Okay.
And I would substitute meaning for consequences.
Two consequences? Okay. It could be both.
Yeah, it could be both, but it's what's happening now.
Oh, I see what you mean by consequences. You're saying that, well, and Steve's point here about taking the data of history and making meaning out of it, maybe this story now becomes a prototype for all kinds of questions about land. So we're dealing with the consequences of this kind of discussion, is what you're saying. Yeah. Lynn?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking, what will land mean to us when it's uninhabitable? And what, because I do think there will be places soon that are uninhabitable. And then what's the promise? What's the thing that keeps people together?
Yeah.
What are people going to be migrating toward?
Yeah. No, it's very true.
Yeah.
Well, if the land becomes inhabitable, people move to places of habitation,
Absolutely.
which means conflict. It means conflict, yeah.
Conflict.
Yeah. David?
So I have a point from way back earlier in the discussion about this buffer. There's a detail of the story that we haven't quite gotten to, which is in order for the land of Reuben to be a buffer, they have to be allied with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And the potential danger is that having split off, they would no longer feel that they were part of this Israel. So
Yeah.
there's another detail in the story. Which
Yes.
is
Yeah.
they build
A mishkan?
what? They
Build an ark, don't they?
yeah, they build a place of worship.
Yes.
And Joshua, or Pinchas, I don't remember who, says, this is bad, and they say, no, we're going to be worshiping Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh.
Yes.
And at that point, that's when the whole deal is approved.
Yes, I see what you're saying. When they vow to commit not only to the people, but to
God.
to God.
Right.
I like it. What point are you making by saying that?
Just that's how it becomes a buffer.
That's how it becomes a buffer. Oh, I see what you mean.
That's the crucial detail. It wouldn't be a buffer just because they were there.
Oh, that's interesting.
They had to commit to the community.
That's very nice. And that's the question of given that communities are made up of individuals who are likely to disagree with one another on a variety of occasions, what are the elements that militate against the centrifugal forces in a society that draw us apart? And you're suggesting that the religion, if they're acknowledging the same God, the same religion, this creates a coherence that deals with Ivan's suggestion here that it's a buffer. Did you hear what David said?
I'm sorry, I was out of the room.
David made the point. David made the interesting point that if unless those 2.5 tribes produce the claims that we are part of that nation. Because inherently, if they're living in a different land, separated by a geographical river, they could easily go their own way and not become a buffer for the people on the other side. And David is saying, what is it that will create or ensure or at least raise the odds that even though they're living separately, they're still going to feel a part of this and therefore be a buffer? And it can't be land, because they're in a different land. It's got to be something else. And David's point is adherence to the same religion, the same God. So that's a very interesting point. It gets in a way back to Malcolm and Vivian's point here, that it may not be land that holds a people unproblematically together. I mean, land is a cohering element. We're in the same room, so we are a group, but it also creates... We're not in the same... Yeah. Class dismiss. Very good. Boy, I walked into that, didn't I? Pardon, mea culpa. No, that's great. Well, you get my point.
But that's another instance of a negotiation about the place of worship.
Yeah.
And Reubenites coming in and once again enabling a peaceful ending by submitting to the authority. So that
Who's the authority here? God? God.
So that it's a peaceful, it's beautifully done, Joshua 22, right?
Well, how about right here?
That a negotiation that begins respectfully.
Yes, continues.
Has greater success
Yeah,
than one that does not.
that's very nice. That's very nice.
And there is a squabble about that place of worship. They are accused of being apart from the central religion.
Yeah.
And it ends peacefully.
Yes, that's great. And you're attributing this in large measure to the deferential approach on the part of the Reubenites.
Well, that helps a lot.
And no question, that's great. Larry?
If you did dovetail on land or religion, you got those 2,000 years, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem, may my land be cut off. So the land sort of is there, but it's also part of the religion.
There you
So
go.
it keeps them together.
I like that. I like that very much. And Larry is pointing to, the exiles, the Psalm 137. If I forget you, but you remember, there's a paradox here, actually. They say the Babylonians insist that we sing some of our psalms. And then they say, but how can we sing a song to the Lord in a promised land? And then they sing the song. So that's the paradox. How can we really do our stuff in a foreign land, and then they do it? So it is true that they're connecting themselves to the land and a yearning for return. One doesn't want to diminish that, but they also have found a way to continue their life in a promised land, albeit in reduced circumstances. That's what's so astonishing about that. And Herzl, when he proposed Uganda at the 5th or the 6th Zionist Congress, and the Eastern European Zionists bolted from it and created a new caucus, he went to them. He recognized he had talk about mollified. He went to them, and he quoted that psalm. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. He is saying for himself, if I forget you, O Jerusalem. when you think about the application of that ancient poem to that crisis moment, he is saying, I'm not going to, you guys are right. I went the wrong way here. Thank you for calling me back. So the use of that psalm at that crisis moment is quite astonishing, I think. Arthur?
So Malcolm's thought made me think there's something peculiar about the three monotheistic religions and land. Christianity talks about Christendom,
Yes.
and Islam talks about the Ummah, and the community lives in the lands of Islam, to the point where, according to Islamic tradition, any land that was once run by Islam is always run by the community.
Right.
You don't see that, I don't think, in Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't talk about its land. It has lands that subscribe to it, doesn't define itself through land. And other philosophies aren't landed either, empiricism and stoicism, etc. So what is about monotheism that hungers for land?
Well, wait a minute. I mean, the prophets are not land-centered, are they? A community is a group that seeks justice and righteousness. Amos predicts the destruction of the land. I mean, they don't ignore the land, but I'm not sure it's a sine qua non, since it's values and faith, so to speak, that help to create the community. I think Christendom, too, you're right about. I mean, obviously, the Roman Empire in its two forms, right, East and West, but with the destruction, the Crusaders tried to get land back, but Christianity has worked very well landless, haven't they?
It's had hold of lands for quite a while, though.
Since when have they not, though?
I think they still do.
Well, the Holy Roman Empire, which was really a shadow of itself. You know when the Holy Roman Empire ended, by the way? Not until like 1806. I think it's Napoleon that finally undid the Holy Roman Empire.
Holy, no Roman,
Nor an empire. Very good. Wow, what a discussion we've had this morning over this chapter. Gee. And in a certain way, Steve's point about finding meaning, this chapter really rings today, doesn't it? Also, I mean, all of these alternatives we've thought about and the problems of land, maybe even the necessity of land over a period of time to give people a sense of the concreteness of their entity. Ideas are airy, so to speak. All right. To be continued. Oh, by the way, what we should do here, since this is the last portion of the book, so let's just go to the very end and read the last two verses. Chapter 36, verse 13. These are the commandments and the regulations that the Lord enjoined upon the Israelites through Moses on the steps of Moab at the Jordan near Jericho. Wow, the last verses are all about land. So we say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Let us be strong, and strengthen one another. I like it. Chazak is singular. First an explanation, then the doing. Maybe you might want to sit. No, so Chazak is singular. Let each of us as individuals be strong. V'nit chazek. Let us strengthen one another, individual and community. Okay, now we're going to do it. We can stand if we want to. Okay, so as we conclude the book of Numbers, another accomplishment, and we're going to look forward to continuing into the book of Deuteronomy. What a journey we have been on and continue to be on. Okay, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Let us be strong, and let us strengthen one another. Amen. Shabbat shalom. Good, yeah, really. Yeah, so true. Who knew? I mean, when I was preparing this, I thought, well, it's fascinating, but I never thought of all these things.
I just finished reading Angela Buxton's book.
Oh, did you? What's the name of the book?
Um,
Yes, she's the
Heart
rabbi.
of a Stranger. She's the head rabbi of Central Synagogue in New York. Her mother was Buddhist, Korean, and her father was Jewish. It was very interesting.
She's an interesting person.
Yeah. But I feel like Judaism is a way of life. It's a philosophy, and the question of do we need land? But then when anti-Semitism rears its ugly head, we need a safe place to go.
That's the argument. Yeah, we're both a diasporic entity that doesn't require our land, but in another way we do. That's the
I mean,
argument.
we can continue our way of life any place, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's a good point. Well, this is what they're arguing. There are other things that hold us together.
Yes. But like World War II, for example, we were so hated in Europe. We needed a place to go, and I would think that helped the Zionist movement, but I know it started way before.
It started way before, but it's a very dramatic example of the need for land, and this is part of the argument of Israel itself, that we need to be strong because we never know when it's going to be needed by diaspora Jews. Yeah. Yeah, good. I'm glad you were here for it. Thanks.
You know how where does Hazak come from?
I don't know.
Okay, but would that be similar to Psalm 27 where it says, "Kov el Adonai, Hazak, be strong," but Hazak, Kov el Adonai, Hazak, Yametz, Libecha.
Wow.
You be strong, and I will give you courage.
Wow.
Does that have a relation? And then it says again, Kov el Adonai.
Where do you, so Psalm 27,
I think that's the one that we say in Elul.
okay, no, this I don't know.
Here, right,
You see it?
The end of it, the end of Psalm 27. Yes, right here.
Okay, good. Hazak v'ya'ametz.
And I will make your heart strong.
Yes. Hope in the Lord.
Hope in the Lord.
Or look to the
you
Lord.
have to be strong, and I will give you courage.
Look to the Lord. Be strong and of good courage doesn't really capture it, does it? Be strong and ya'ametz. He will strengthen your heart. Is that what you're
Yeah.
suggesting?
In other words, we have to be strong too, and
We-
that
we
will make
as-
our heart. That will make our heart have more courage.
I guess that's it. What's the ya'ametz here? Who's the...
God, I think it says God, right?
It doesn't say God. It just says He will strengthen. Well, okay, hope in the Lord. Here, hope in the Lord, be strong, and He will strengthen your heart.
Yeah.
And what are you saying here?
I'm saying, like, you know how you say Hazak, maybe Chazek?
Yes.
Okay, like in other words, we all have to have that strength and strengthen each other. Is that sort of similar to here saying, okay, we're hoping in the Lord.
Yes.
We're going to be strong.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna on our own we're gonna be strong.
Yes.
And if we feel that way, God can give us that courage to sort of go on in life. And then it says again, hope in the Lord. Is there a similarity there or a relationship there?
Well, that's the question. I think the answer is clearly yes, whether the relationship, whether there's a causal connection between the two forms. Did chazak and chazek emerge in reflecting on this, or is this one thing and that's another?
That's what I was wondering.
Thematic similarity, but not necessarily influence on each other.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to
Yeah.
that. Because it depends upon the answer to your first question, what's the origin of chazak?
Yeah.
And I don't know. If we explored that, we might find that it came from here.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. But it's a nice thing to start.
Oh,
the
no
day with.
question. And where did you come up with this? You're studying
I've
with...
always loved Psalm 27, and
And in particular, you know, I like that part.
I love that. I never noticed this.
Yeah, and just the way Psalm 27 says, you know, to me, if I remember it correctly, it's like God will be there for you. And there's going to be things that come up, but God will be there for you, and then it just seems to cap it off.
I like that. I like that. Good for
Anyway,
you.
yeah.
That's great. I wonder, do we need to get out of here for
Yep.
Shabbat?
Oh, comes out of it. Now, this is the actual part of this topic. Okay, I need to get to
My guitar ready.
Mommy, it's outside.
No, I know.
Here, guys, come here.
Here, where's my phone?
What do you need?
Shalom again. Hi, everyone. Good Shabbos.
Stingy cord? He's up to stingy cord.